Dave, welcome to the Consistency Club podcast. I know we've been working together for 6 months now, and a nice opportunity for us to go over that experience and that process and discuss your key takeaways. It's a different person that I see in front of me now than when we first talked, and it's been a great experience to date in terms of phase one. But the whole idea around these episodes are to provide people with some insight, some value, maybe people that are in a similar position now to where you were at the start, and to run through your kind of motivation for wanting to change, the reasoning, and what you've been through. But if you don't mind, Dave, just introduce yourself to the network, and then we'll dive straight in.
Yeah, sounds good. So my name is Dave Hatz. I'm a 46-year-old guy. I have two wonderful kids, 4 and 6 years old. So young kids keeping me on my toes. And, I'm a technology executive. I have been in the C-suite. Right now, my current role is VP of Machine Intelligence. So I live and breathe in the AI space. And so for me, just being at this point in life, I've got a lot to go. I've got, a lot of reasons to really invest in myself. Reason we get started to work together really was that I was just at analysis paralysis. I just had no idea where to go, how to achieve really the lifestyle that I know is required to sustain me and excel me moving forward.
Love that. Let's get into where you were when we first connected and first had our conversation. I mean, we can go through stats and numbers and talk about the weight loss and all of that stuff, but I think, and you'll resonate with this, a huge portion of health improvement and the health journey is mental. So where were you mentally when we first connected and we had our initial conversation?
So I think it's fair to say that early in my career, I had gone all in professionally. Work was my identity. And over the last 5-6 years with the kids, I've gotten to the point where I had carved out, my family was first and then work was second. But that's really where it stopped for me. And I wasn't prioritizing myself in there really at all. Again, I knew there were things I needed to tune up. I needed to lose weight. I needed to lose body fat percent, but it wasn't a consideration really. I wasn't doing any actions to actually help me achieve those areas that deep down I know I need to improve. But for me, it was really work hard when I'm at work and then hard with my family when I'm with my family. But, sort of in there, my own well-being, my own sleep is an example. It just sort of was whatever was left. And, I know that's one of the things you and I focused on quite a bit early on was, starting to make some of those personal behaviors non-negotiable. And, for me, I'll just, jump to it. The thing that resonated the most with it was, in my job, if someone comes in and wants to get some time with me, well, there's a trade-off. I can't, in most days, I don't have free time.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to devote half an hour to someone who's asking for it, I need to make a trade-off. And my mindset was not that same way around my personal well-being and my personal space. And so I know that's one of the things that, that I know I really appreciate that you helped me start to just reframe the way I was thinking about, all the aspects, frankly, of my own journey of prioritizing them.
Yeah.
And, being intentional about it.
You've heard me use the word intention a lot through the last 6 months.
Yeah.
You might be sick of it, but you make such a good point. The intention is often the obstacle, not the time and not the schedule. Right. It's just the lack of prioritization and intention. And that isn't a knock on where you were. I think we've all been there as family men or women and striving to develop our careers and kind of, I think for all of us, our career can become our identity, but there comes a time where you are faced with a decision to make. You can feel you're on a slippery slope health-wise. And I think for, a lot of people moving through, and we had kids, we've established our career, you get to the point in which you've got to your C-suite roles or you're in ownership or you're in leadership roles. And it's like, okay, I've worked my way up to this level. I have enough intuition to look back and go, there's been a sacrifice I've had to make there. And you're at a stage in life in which you can project for the future and go, probably can't sustain what I'm doing now. So you get to that junction, that kind of fork in the road, and you've got to make a choice. And of course it comes with hard work. Like and for anyone listening, I can't emphasize this enough, your level of compliance pretty much from day one was phenomenal. And that's credit to you as an individual, because I think there's along this journey, there's different points. You got that commitment point where you commit your time and financially to the process and I'm going to go on this journey. You then have the commitment point of like, okay, I've done that. I've still got to action on the back
Right.
end. And
Yep.
those two things for you came together, which can sometimes be really, really rare. And it takes discipline and determination to do it. And not every day would have been easy for you, but your level of compliance on the nutrition, the small tasks that I get you to do that I'm sure when I first prescribed, you're like, is there much value in that when you're super, super busy? Just trusting in process. And you've done that from day one. What was your, and I mean, just to put some numbers on this, pounds wise, in terms of how much you're down? I was trying to have a look before. You are down.
I'm just about 40. I mean,
I was
I'm
gonna
like,
say, yeah,
I mean, I'm within 1 or 2 of being 40 pounds down now in 5.5, almost 6 months.
yeah,
That's
which is incredible.
crazy.
And there hasn't been within that, this is an important note as well, there hasn't been like dramatic reductions in calorie intake in that time.
No, it's small things. And it's, there are so many moments through this journey so far that I look at, maybe naive is the best word to use, that I just didn't realize how important little things were. Example, I had started working out. I was riding a bike 3 or 4 times a week on my own. And I was just incorrectly, I was taking all the calories that I burned and said, okay, well, if I have a calorie deficit before I work out, in my planning, then I work out, well, that gives me another 600 or 800 calories that I can just eat.
Yeah.
No, that goes to expanding the deficit. And just that little correction was huge for me. But no, I think the macro mix is the piece that, also really helped me, that again, I wasn't even thinking about. I was thinking calories. Calorie deficit equals weight loss. And, as you've helped me, at various points in the journey, adjust the macros based on what's the right mix for what we're trying to achieve at that point in time. And, in doing that, that's, I think, you're the expert here, but that to me is what has enabled me not to be hungry. Again, we're, yes, there's a calorie deficit right now. And, we've talked recently even of, that's going to adapt as we go into the next phase of my journey as well. But, I'm well fulfilled. I'm not having to forego going to dinner with my family. I'm not, I travel a lot for work. And so I'm not eating rice cakes in a hotel room away from everyone else that's eating in the buffet line. I'm doing the best I can with what I have and holding myself accountable that at the end of the day, yes, I need to hit these targets. And, for me, I'm a very analytical person. I'm a very numbers person. And so, for me, one of the things that works best is having those number targets because it gives me something very quantifiable that I can target for. That's in my personal life, my professional life, everything. And so, to the compliance piece, I think that's one of those areas that for me, actually, that part comes more natural. There's some other areas that I struggle with more, but for me, having a target and being able to hit it, I can separate myself from the hunger or the body functions in that and really just focus on task is to hit the number. And if that means 2 almonds gets you from 10 under to spot on, okay, I'll eat 2 almonds to tuning in at the very end. Working, with a coach who's remote, I'm in the US, you're in the UK. I also look at it as, I need to commit to being as transparent with the data, to giving you the full picture so that in turn you can help me. There was a while where it was a little uncomfortable even, being as transparent as I need to be with my behaviors, with what I eat, with what I'm doing. But I had to, I sort of forced myself to just become peace that I've asked for a coach. This coach is my ticket to a better lifestyle, to a system that's sustainable. I've got to contribute everything I can to enable the coach to be successful helping me. It's just that full circle commitment. And so once I sort of came at peace with that and that's really what let me just move past it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yes. So true. Everything you said there about the relationship between coach client. And it's a really important point because a coach isn't there. In fact, on one of the recent podcast episodes that we hosted, I discussed the importance of being sympathetic. A coach isn't there to tear you down. Now, there's times that, we've got to say, slap the wrist and get going. But actually, without that data, it's very difficult to do our job. And coaching is about people. It's not about the links that I send and the progress reports, and it kind of is, but it's not really about the data. It's about this. It's about me and you. When we connect on our calls, we debrief on our personal life. We debrief on work. We debrief on what's going well and how you're feeling. We take it to a different level because people understand, like, this journey ebbs and flows and integrates with your life. There's periods of stresses and periods where it's easier. So having that kind of sympathetic approach is important, but that can't happen without the appropriate data. Because if I'm going into it blind, I can't help you. So I've always appreciated that. And like I said, you adapted that pretty quickly. What was it about our conversation or the Consistency Club in terms of the protocol that we run that when we had that first call, you were like, let's go on this journey. I trust you.
Yeah. For me, it's interesting because the way you reached out to me was a LinkedIn message and we didn't know each other. And, more often than not, I just ignore those messages. And I don't mean this like this was perfect marketing or anything. It truly just hit me at a point in time where this was in the back of my mind of I have a number of friends who are in their mid 40s and who are dealing with cancer, who are dealing with other serious medical ailments, a few who have lost their battle. And it was sitting in the back of my mind of I need to put myself in the best place that if something in my health changes over the next decade, 2, 3 decades, that A, I'm in the best position I can to fight it off, to win. B, I've got young kids. And so again, in the back of my mind is I am not at my best for them. When they want to go run around the yard and have me chase them, I can chase them for a bit, but I can't keep chasing them as long as they want me to. And so it was small things like that were they were in the back of my mind. I just didn't have a path to action them. And so when we had that first conversation, what became really apparent is that this is a path to action. And, I remember you asking me at the beginning of that first call, what are the next steps here? Do you need some time to process this? What do you need to become more informed to determine, is this right for you? And I never do this, but I told you right then and there, let's go.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that, being hit. It was the reality of what am I, I asked myself sort of real quick, what am I going to go find a different option that I am convinced is going to be a more productive or a higher opportunity to hit my objective? And the reality is I could go search the internet for years and I'm going to be right in that analysis paralysis that I had been struggling with. And so, when you came along, it was truly, hey, here is someone that I trust. It just feels right. And at the same time, I'm not going to find an option that I am convinced is better. Now, is it a better option? It's a gamble. Honestly, I didn't know. No one would know. But it was enough to say, let's go on this journey. Let's start. Let's do something. And if, I remember you asked me, what's your goal? And I told you it wasn't a number. There's no one target. And I think that was valuable. In hindsight, that was really valuable perspective for me. It sort of goes back to the, James Clear Atomic Habits of, the goal is not, what you should really be focused. Yes, it's there. Yes, it's even can be important, but it's not that, it's the system. And what you brought to me was the opportunity to develop a system, to tune that system to me. And, at the time, I remember even looking at it in 6 months, that sounds like the perfect amount of time. And here we are talking about, expanding the system because I have more on my system that I want to build.
Yeah.
And so, it was a combination of timing. It was a combination of, being an opportunity for me to actually develop that system.
Yeah. And what would you say, as you explained there, pretty much immediately like, let's do it. I want to take action. But how does it feel, or what would you say to yourself back then, now that you're in the position and you've been through the initial 6 months, having achieved what you've achieved and the person mentally and physically that you've turned into through this process? What would be the message that you would have said to yourself back then, and could you perceive getting this far?
There's a lot in there. So the first message that comes to mind is do it sooner, get a coach sooner.
Yeah.
Professionally, anytime you have a skill gap, what do? You go get a coach, especially as you get into the leadership ranks. You go get a coach. And yet it was so like, I truly never considered it. And I think it's because the fitness world, going to the gym, it was not in my identity. So I think that's the first bit for me. Very much, I think one that has hit me over just the last couple of weeks with some of our conversations is understand the word intensity. And you and I literally, again, this is, my need to educate and understand myself. We were starting in on a new weight program here within the last couple months, and you kept throwing around, focus on intensity. Your intensity's got to improve. And I remember a couple days in, week in, I specifically asked you, okay, can you, just for your, what you view it as, identify intensity for me so that I'm on the same page. And it's taken in my workouts, it's taken a while for me to adapt that. But I think I'm hitting my stride there. And I did a workout yesterday as an example, a Tabata. That is my least favorite. And in fact, over the last 2 weeks, I've missed two. That's the only workout I've missed over the last 2 weeks consistently. And you put me in my place that I needed to get it done. I had the most intense Tabata yesterday that I've ever had. And it's because I was taking what we were doing on some other some other parts of the weight program and put that intensity in place there. Looking back, I should have been doing that since near the beginning. I get the first few weeks, there's some getting my body to the point where I can actually just do the movements. But then I should have been focused on that intensity back then. It would have been, because this is all an investment in your future self. So had I done that back there, I'm just thinking, well, I would have been a couple weeks ahead now. I'm not beating myself up over it, but it's one of those realities or realizations that, man, this is an important piece to embrace. And if I do, it amplifies the gains down the road.
Exactly that. It's also important in that process to not rush it, though. There is educational kind of milestones and pillars as you go through your journey that you'll get to at different times depending on the individual. It's important not to rush it. Even in my mind, in terms of the journey, it's been in perfect synchronization, because if we push to for many reasons, but if we push to the intensity, first and foremost, you achieve the result you've achieved, which is incredible, having done what we were doing. If you were to push to true intensity, that we're going through this new learning curve now of really, really developing your skill set when it comes to training and resistance training. Back then, would your body have been as resilient enough to withstand it, to recover properly, to not get injured? So everything happens kind of incrementally as it's meant to, as long as there's consistency and there's compliance and your kind of dedication is there enough so that we can piece together the days, the weeks, the months. And like I said, you've been brilliant. What would you say to someone who was doubtful, fearful, worried about having a remote coach? Because I think that's one thing for a lot of people that, and I can argue this still. I'm blue in the face because I'm passionate about it, and I come from the one-to-one world. But I understand also we put our value into what we can feel and touch. A lot of people want to, rather than relying on the motivation to get themselves to go and train, they want the motivation to meet someone there so they don't feel like they're letting them down. What would you say to someone now, you're in the consistency club, if they were doubtful or fearful about the remote side of training?
Yeah. So I think it definitely is. And again, I haven't experienced in-person coaching in this regard. So, in business, all of my coaches are remote. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was a little more comfortable. There definitely is a level of self-accountability that's required. But I also think that's really important in my mind, because as much as I enjoy working with you and am gaining from it, I don't believe that you will be my coach forever.
And I shouldn't be.
Yeah. And so I need that self-accountability at whatever point we decide to, I decide to move on. I need that self-accountability or I will not be successful. And so I think, yes, it may be a little more difficult early on in that regard because I have to commit. But it also goes to, that committing early means you will realize the benefits quicker. And so I think, to me, I look at that as either the commitment's going to happen somewhere in the journey or it's not. If it's going to happen in the journey, make it happen early and get it over with. Besides that, I think, we've had, lots of touch points. You're always there. I can message any question. You are there for it. 6 hours time zone difference. It's not a big deal for me. I mean, I've never felt that I was in a lurch, that I was sitting waiting and at a point where I was stuck. I think, again, the one-on-one touch points that we have are really valuable. Sometimes we're talking, behaviors. Sometimes we're talking, what's the next step? Because again, I like in my head, I want to see the plan, laid out a few steps ahead. And so we're talking that. Sometimes I'm sending you videos of my technique and saying, here, can you review this? Because I don't feel that I'm there. It's not right. Or you're saying, send me a video and let me make sure that your form is right. And I think, that for me, it's gone both ways where, I've never felt that the difference between you watching on a video screen or you standing over my shoulder is any different. So, I mean, I would say, to anyone with that concern, at least give it a shot.
Yeah.
But if you're committed, it doesn't have to be a barrier.
And think, you raised an important point. I want to go back to the self-accountability part in a minute, but just think of those video form reviews that we do.
Mm-hmm.
If you do those in person, that is a moment in time and our memory fades.
Right.
Those video libraries that you have, take those links, store them in a Google Drive or in your file somewhere. You can go in 10 years' time, you can go back and say, how did Jamie, an RDL, for example, Romanian deadlift. You're not going to be doing that every single day for the rest of life. You might change. We'll change it up, right? We'll be mixing in new workouts. When you get back to the movement, there's a bit of a learning curve again. And the weight's a little bit down, you put it back up. You can, any time in your life, you can go watch those videos. And it's a live video breakdown of you doing those movements. So that's really, really important. I think a lot of people, how would you do the training part? Actually, if you're willing to send the video and have a little bit more patience, it's more valuable. And going back to the self-accountability bit, that's the most important part of this entire process on every single level. Developing the mindset to ensure, and the accountability to ensure that your future life you are accountable for is the number one thing that I want people to take away from experience working together. And you just don't get that from other solutions when you're reliant on, all you do is rock up, you're sat in your car 10 minutes before the session. And I've been there with clients before, and you walk in, PT's just finished with another client, you jump straight into your session, they count your reps and push you a little bit, you go out. There's not a ton of stuff done on the back end in terms of health optimization and biomarkers. Equally, when you travel, it kind of falls apart a little bit. So I'm glad you raised that point, because if the biggest thing, I mean, you've achieved an incredible transformation and all of that good stuff, but if the biggest thing you took away is the self-accountability and the mindset learned to continue this yourself, because you should not work with me for the rest of your life, then that is worth its absolute weight in gold. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's an important point and one I'm very, 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 very passionate about. What would you say for someone who's kind of stuck in a position of knows the way they're living isn't advocating a healthy lifestyle? They've got some weight they want to lose or some muscle they want to put on, or they just don't have a routine and a rhythm. They're balancing family, they're balancing their career. How do you get to a point, in your perspective, where you go from point A, frustration, knowing I need to change, to point B, mentally I'm ready and prepared to action? What was that bridge for you? Because that happened before we connected, I feel.
I think it did. And I'm gonna pull a little bit of what I've learned in the program into this answer, because I think it's helped me reflect a little. But I think it's, at first I was putting this as the transformation is the focus here. Yeah. And when I was thinking of it that way, that's a really big jump. That's a really big, endeavor. And anytime, at least for myself, anytime I'm looking at a big endeavor, I want more information. I want to consider it. I want to hem and haw over, should I, shouldn't I? What's the risk? What's the value? And I, again, it gets back to that analysis paralysis, because it's on this pedestal as such a big transformation. And in the end, that's part of what held me back from ever doing anything. Mm-hmm. And I think, eventually it became the realization of, I need to just do something. And the reality is that something can be 1% better. That something, because the 1%, if again, it's the back to the atomic habits, 1% every day is 37% over the year. So, it's, or 37x, over the year. So it's that I finally got to the point where I was almost, I don't want, apathetic's not the right word, but it was almost just, Jamie, just do something better for me. If all that comes to this is weight loss, Well, that's a thing I've been struggling with.
Yeah.
If all that comes from this is better mental clarity, better able to focus, and gets me back to where I was 10 years ago, just from a professional standpoint, that's a win. And it was sort of almost, I got to the point where when we started, I wasn't really concerned on all of the benefits, all of the gains that I now know I've realized in the last 6 months. I was like, just open to help me on any of these. And let's see where we go. And I think that shift in my thinking is what, opened me up to be ready for all of the gains that have since sort of manifested themselves.
Yeah. What would you say? And I'm not sure if you had this because, again, and I'm sure you did a little bit deep down, but you were kind of, which I absolutely love, just shoot the gun, let's pull the trigger, and let's see what happens. Whenever that happens, usually there's good results because it's testament to your mindset. I hear a lot that a lack of self-confidence is the reason why people wouldn't go on this journey. Not they don't trust the plan or the program or anything like that, but they don't back themselves to be able to comply it through because they've failed so many times. They've just ruined their inner confidence and don't trust themselves essentially. So one, did you face that? Was there any part of you that experienced that at the start? For those people, what would you say if they're stuck in that position and struggle to pull the trigger on these things?
So absolutely, I faced that. I think we talked a little at the beginning, from a weight loss alone perspective. I had been trying for 8 or 10 years to go down, and all I've done is ended up. It was a yo-yo. And again, for many reasons. But, I've also having sort of gone through the process, what I didn't expect in the program was for my inner identity to change, for how I view myself, both physically as well as just holistically. And, I think we were talking about this a little while ago. And when I was a fifth grader, I was the chubby fifth grader. We would have a little like mini Olympics in the last week or two of school. And I remember still the one medal I got in that was the 3-legged race, where it wasn't my athletic ability or anything there. It was pure coordination with my partner. That's what got me the medal there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had any. I didn't win in any of the races, the hurdles, all those things, because I didn't believe in myself as an athlete. I've never thought of myself as an athlete. And, B, the times that I did try to improve myself physically, with weight, with anything, I had failed. And so, going through this program, one of the things that hit me, and I never expected this, was when I look in the mirror, I actually see an athlete now. When I'm sitting there doing my reps, my inner identity has changed. And that's not through monumental things. That's through all those 1% better things built up. It's through all those, seeing myself follow this and see myself get the results, see myself increase my weights. All of those little observations have built this up to where now I've opened myself up to be able to see myself differently. And, that's one of those things that I think is going to be real key to my success. After, we part our ways, is my identity has changed. And now I'm maintaining that identity, not the identity of the chubby kid who's always going to be overweight and never going to be fit because I can't do it.
That, I think, is the best possible place to end and wrap up. I think that's a great summary of your experience. It's so interesting because we go through this journey as building our relationship. And of course, we discuss all these things to some degree, but actually for an opportunity for us both to reflect on the mental change is gratifying, of course, for me to hear, and is why I do what I do. But it's great to see in you, and I've seen it in you going through the process, but to hear you kind of speak it is really, really nice as well. And I think internal view and internal perception of oneself is such a big part of anyone's health journey. As you said, you will become the identity you perceive. You perceive yourself to be someone who doesn't comply and is overweight and can't keep on top of it, doesn't have the time. That's who you will become if you emulate. And sometimes you have to fake it till you make it at the start. You only build trust by winning those small 1% battles daily, getting your data in, doing the workouts, eating right, sleeping properly, like settling into the rhythm that we built for you. You start to gain trust in yourself, and then your perception is like, oh no, I'm actually someone that can do this. And that mental transition and transformation plays exactly into what you said earlier, which is the self-accountability. Those two things go hand in hand, and that pairing together will ensure, I have no doubt, in 10 years time, we won't be working together one-on-one because you won't, you don't need me. However, when we're in touch and I say, Dave, how's it going? I have no doubt the message will be a positive one because of the mindset shift. And that's, great to see. We're not done yet, but I appreciate you sharing your journey with the network. Hopefully there's been some value from my side so far in this phase one. It's been an absolute pleasure. Your determination, your grit, your will to change has got you to where you are. Like I'm the Sherpa in this journey. You take the steps and you've done it. So great to see, and congrats on the success so far, and looking forward to what the next phase kind of has in store for us, which is exciting because now is, I think I said to you before, is the fun part now.
Yeah.
But really appreciate you coming on board, and let's continue the journey.
No, I appreciate it so much as well. Again, it's truly, I don't use the word lightly, but it's life-changing. It really is. And like I said, I'm excited for what's next too. So we're not done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening, whether you're on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Please consider liking, commenting, subscribing if you want more of these, any subject matter that you would like me to speak on individually. And if anything that kind of me and David discussed today has resonated with where you're at, then feel free to reach out and we can have a chat. But Dave, I appreciate it, my friend. I'll speak to you very, very soon. And thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
You got it, bud.
Take care.